Email, Chapter 1. Location, Delaham. A city that small businesses actually know how to thrive, and other businesses of chains can easily survive. It's a bit of an interesting area of a population of almost 3 million. It's not too bad of an area. Most people find it very convenient, finding their local restaurants, local good stores, good people. Sometimes they come with some good people, but some people aren't so lucky. It actually has a person named Mark Griffin, a tall old guy with short brown hair, always seems bored of everything. He's a writer. He doesn't really care much about the business life, but he sees that this is the main area that he can actually live, where the rent is not that much. It's not too big of an apartment complex. One bedroom, not much of a actual living expenses, but he sees that it's a big good area to him to write. He usually goes to the store every single day. A main area so this way he doesn't have to worry about doing much. It's not, but the main good reason is because it's really close by his apartment complex. He noticed that the one cashier seems to have a little crush on him. He didn't really care much about it considering that how young she looks. He considered her to be at least around 18 or maybe in her early 20s. He didn't really care much about dating, but for this particular time he thought that maybe, just maybe, he can try, but he didn't really care about actually attempting it or going through with it. He just wanted to be alone writing his books and all. Though he noticed that his books do okay, but they're not world and number one sellers. All he knows is that he just likes to have fun writing. One day, he receives an email. Not too much of anything, but he noticed that they didn't have a subject. All he knows is that he might as well just answer because he doesn't really like keeping emails inside of his actual index. Mainly because he doesn't want them to pile up and actually make what his first emails were, because that's why he had to delete it. Had a total of over 1,000 emails that he never read. So he decided to delete that one and create a new one for only businesses purposes. So he didn't really want to actually clutter his with unread emails. But when he opened it, it became a really big of a shock to him. He read, follow the information to a T. Tomorrow you will receive 3 tasks. I would recommend you doing all 3 of them in a timely basis or your life will be on the line. Your next message to get all the information will come at 8:40 a.m. Check your email on that time and follow the instruction as it was given. He was a little bit scared, but a little confused, considering that he didn't know who sent it, nor did he know what it was about. He was thinking about ignoring it, but he thought to himself, maybe I should just entertain this email or the person who sent it. He didn't know if anybody was watching him. He didn't have any enemies, but to be honest with you, he didn't even have any friends either, so he didn't really know what to do. All he knows is just he might as well just complete the task because he had nothing really to do that day. He was planning on writing a chapter for his book, but he decided to actually scrap it because technically speaking, it was not too big of a deal. So he decided to go along with the actual message and decided to actually do the task just to see how it was. He didn't know what to actually expect from these tasks. All he knew is that they said that seeing his life was on the line, he did not know that that person was actually watching him or not. So he decided to actually do it irregardless. And so begins. He decided to actually go to get some rest for these tasks before the task, because he didn't want to be in a very sleepy position before the task began. So he decided to go to sleep. 8:20 a.m. He's pacing around the room wondering what did this task actually could contain. He doesn't know what this message could be, nor who sent it. Wondering what would the task entail. Will he be asked to kill a person? Or worse, what could this message actually prove? Who sent it? And for one thing, why did they send it? He was so nervous that he was pacing, couldn't get any sleep. He can see that he only got probably around 3 hours of sleep, trying his best to fall asleep, but with this message actually looming around his head, he didn't know what to think, nor what to expect. 8:20 was just so nerve-wracking for him. He didn't even know what time it was or what could he have possibly done to get into this situation. 20 minutes later, 8:40 came about, and soon enough, the actual message came to be. He then opens his messages, and in the emails, it read, "Follow the instructions, go to 3rd Street basketball court and find a boy named James Smith and walk him home. You have until 9 a.m. to complete this task. I will email you for the next task if your task is completed." He ran fast to 3rd Street and not knowing what to expect. It took him a while, but he finally made it. He actually saw a little boy shooting a basketball by himself with red hair, wearing a tight gray shirt and green pants. Shoes looked like they've been seen better days. Looking around, he didn't understand why would he need to actually walk this kid home. He didn't understand what was going on, but he didn't bother trying to actually think about it. All he had to do is just walk the kid home. That's all he wanted to do, to get home and actually figure out what the next task is going to be, considering that time was running out. But the main problem is, how was he going to approach him? He didn't want to just approach him and then actually avoid thinking him as a creeper. So he actually had to think about it. Should I just go to him and ask him to actually go take him home? It's kind of weird for another person to actually ask you to just come across and just ask to take you home. Pretty weird. But he ignored all those feelings and just had to go confront the boy. "Hello there," he asked. James looked at him and just said, "Hello, do you want to play basketball with me?" What a nice kid, Mark thought. But he said, "No, I'm here to take you home." James looked at him for a few seconds, but then smiled and said, "Okay." Mark was surprised he just said okay just like that. Just to a complete stranger, no less. So he decided to walk him home. James never seen him before, so why would he be so nice and just allow him to walk him home? It was kind of odd, but he didn't really try to question it. James looked at Mark, and for some apparent reason, James just asked, "Sir, are you okay?" Mark looked at him and said, "Yes, I'm fine." Mark knew something was off, but James, it kind of seemed like he really did care. He didn't seem like he was up to anything, but to be honest with you, Mark was wondering, why did he actually just say okay to me? That's when Mark just looked at him and asked, "James, why would you just say okay to me even though you never actually met me? I don't believe I've seen you before." James looked at him and said, "You seem like a nice person. You don't seem like you want to hurt me or harm me or do anything bad to me. So why shouldn't I say okay? Are you gonna do something?" James looked at him in response. But Mark just couldn't do anything. He couldn't say anything either. He said, "No, I'm not really gonna do it. I'm just here to walk you home." James said, "By who?" Mark couldn't really answer the question, considering that he didn't want him to think that it was just because of an email. He believed that James would have more questions than answers, considering that Mark didn't even know the answers to himself. So it was kind of a touchy subject. Soon enough, the conversation and his feelings was at ease when James quickly pointed out, saying, "This is my house." Mark looked at the house and noticed it was quite big. He was wondering, how is it that this kid looked like his clothes are so torn, but his actual house looks like it was a mansion. Why is that? He didn't want to actually stay and linger, considering that the time he had to actually do the second task. So Mark just said, "Okay, here you go. Don't be don't be a stranger, okay?" Mark James looked and smiled, saying, "Okay, maybe sometime we can play basketball together." Mark's eyes just widened and said, "Okay." He didn't know how to respond to him. It kind of seemed like this kid was a little naive, or was he just happy? Happy that someone was there to talk to him. He was a little surprised, but he didn't want to actually linger, considering that he was on a timeline here. So he then decided to go back home. He then waved goodbye and hoped that everything would work itself out. So Mark decided to go home. Getting back home, he got back home at 8:59. It wasn't that far off. Luckily, he got the task done quite early. So he decided to log into his email and wait for the next task to come, wondering and looking at the clock, waiting for the 9:10 to come. Finally, it decided 9:10 came, and as soon as it happened, that's when the next email came. Mark opened it, and it read, "Your next task. You must find a person and go to that goes by the name of Mark Kane. He stays at 419 Love Drive. Convince him to go to the store with you. You have until 9:40 to complete this task." Doesn't seem too hard to do, Mark thought to himself. He ran out the house, hoping to actually get this task done as early as convenience, but then realized this is just another person that he doesn't know, nor does the person know him. Why would a complete stranger want me to take them to the store? He became nervous and decided to actually slow down his pace, but then to remember, if I don't do this task and at a certain time, I don't know what's going to happen to me. The letter was quite specific, saying that if I don't complete the task, then my life will be at risk. He decided to speed up a bit, just to find the house 7 minutes later. He became even more nervous when he saw the house. Not knowing what to expect, he decided to go to the porch and knock on the door. That's when a boy answered the door. He was pretty tall, but notice he was wearing a middle school uniform. He seemed like he was in one of those private school sectors. Mark seen them walking around the apartment from time to time when they get out of school. "Who are you?" the boy asked. Mark looked nervous. "My name is Mark. I'm here to take you to the store," he replied. The boy looked up and down at him and asked, "Why do you want to help me?" Mark responded by saying, "I don't know. I was sent to help you, that's all I know." Mark took one last look at him and said, "Okay, just give me a minute." He then shut the door, and Mark thought to himself, "Well, that hard part is done." But he wondered, why would he need to come back and everything? He seemed like he was fully dressed, but he's not going to question it, considering that he is a stranger, and he wouldn't trust it either. Mark stood outside the door for a good 3 minutes and came out the door. "My name is Terry, by the way," the boy responded. But now Mark noticed he had a pocket knife in his pocket. "Can you help me get my mom off the porch?" And then that's when you see his mom in a wheelchair and saw that she didn't speak. As Mark helped his mom get off the porch, they started walking to the store. And that's when Mark asked Terry, "What happened to her mom? Can she see me?" Terry responded, "Yes, she can see you. She just he didn't bother finishing that sentence. Mark decided to ask one more question. Who is helping you take care of her? That's when Terry looked down and said, no one. My dad left. So I've been taking care of her for all this time. Mark then asked, what's wrong with her? Terry then looked and said, it's cancer. Mark then responded by saying, the big C. Terry then looked at him and said, yeah, it happened 3 years ago. She had brain cancer. That's when Mark just looked and said, I'm sorry to hear that. I would help, but I don't know how I could help. Terry then looked and said, well, walking to the store with me, I guess that's something. That's more than I can say for anybody else who actually asked. He then looked at Terry and said, why do you need your mom to come with you at the store? And that's when Terry answered, because they need to actually see her for some odd reason. I don't know why, but they don't really trust me in actually getting medicine for her nowadays. And he wondered, and that's when Mark asked, why not? Terry then said, well, I used to hang around the bad crowd before the situation happened. So, if you must know, I was a little bit of a, well, you just will figure that part out. Mark just wondered and said, are you sure you were doing a criminal activity? Terry then said, what the heck do you think? Why do you think they need to see my mom to actually get her medicine? Mark then replied, does the medicine actually help? Then Terry said, well, if in a way, yes, but in my opinion, it kind of just seems like they're just delaying the inevitable. Mark then just said, what do you mean by that? Terry just looked at him and said, well, I don't expect Mom to be alive for more than 10 years. The cancer looks like it's already doing too much to her. That's when Mark said, what do you mean by that? Terry then looked at him and replied, well, if I heard correctly, the doctor said that the cancer isn't just in her brain. Mark then looked at him and said, what do you mean by that? That's when Terry looked at him and looked at the ground, saying, it could, well, if you must know, the cancer is spreading. It's not just in her brain anymore. The real reason she can't see you is because it's affecting other parts of her body. It became abundantly clear that it affected her eyes over a month ago, and then it started affecting her arms. I think it's affecting her spine. If I'm correct, it will kill her within probably less than a year. Mark didn't know what to say at that point. All he can do is look forward, and while he sees the store that they were heading toward. Well, while they're in the store, the clerk then looked at the woman and said, your prescription is ready. I'll get it for you. The clerk took at least 15 minutes. Mark looking at his watch the whole entire time, walking around seeing, is there anything he needs to get from this pharmacy? Terry then just looked at Mark and said, what are you looking for? Mark just responded saying, maybe there are some things I may need. I mean, seriously, I've been in the house constantly. There may be some things that I want to check out, like some cold medicine, maybe some allergy medicine. Hell, it's close to that time anyway, so I might as well stock up or see if there's something I actually need in here. Terry looked at him and said, well, go ahead. My mom's medicine should be done in probably around maybe 2 more minutes. It usually takes this long for them to get everything prepared. But then he looked at him and said, Didn't the clerk say that her prescription was already ready? He then looked at Mark and said, sometimes it may take him a little while just to get everything situated. Seeing that there's one courtesy clerk working here right now, I'm expecting a little longer of a wait. It was around 5 people that I can expect it not to be too long, maybe around 4 minutes. Mark looked and said, well, as long as you are a diligent type person, it seems. Terry then laughed and said, yeah, I had to grow into it. I was a more immature type person at first, but after this situation, I think it's a call saying, stop the immature bullcrap and actually grow up. Well, Mark really couldn't say much he couldn't really say much to that one. All he can do is say, well, I can't agree, but I can't disagree. I don't know you that well, so whatever you think it is, that could be it. The courtesy clerk called Terry up and said, your prescription is ready, here you go. That will be a total of $49.51. Terry took out a 50 and paid the guy. He said, well, you can keep the change. I don't really care for it right now. The courtesy clerk looked at him and said, are you sure? You still got a bit of change left. He said, nah, you can keep it. Besides, we need to hurry up and get back home. Mark said, well, let us go. The rest of the walk was in complete silence. Terry knowing what to say but not wanting to ask, and Mark knowing what to say but didn't want to ask because he didn't want to get into their business too much, but decided just to walk him to his home. While getting there, he actually walked to his home and then helped his mom up the porch and into the house. Terry said, thank you. I needed to get that out. My friends don't really talk about it that much because they kind of feel a little weird of actually talking about this situation. Mark then replied, I can kind of understand. Definitely they don't know the full story. He then waved goodbye and actually decided to walk home. And that's when Terry shut the door. After he heard the door click, he decided to run right back to the apartment just to see how the email is going. And definitely considering that it's around 9:15, so he has to hurry. Mark makes it home. 9:19, he signs into his email and waits for 9:20 to come. As soon as the clock hit 9:20, fast the message actually appeared. He then clicks it and opens it, and it read, your next and final task, find a woman by the name of Crystal Washington and stop her from doing something she's not supposed to do. You will find her at 1015 Johnson Drive. You must finish this task before 10 o'clock. Mark became confused, not knowing what he's supposed to stop her from doing, but nevertheless, he decided to go out and actually try to find the address. 10 minutes later, after wandering around, he managed to find the address, only to find a girl with other friends. 3 other females was around her, so he decided not to actually engage. Didn't want to seem like a person who was actually just some kind of stranger just around girls, so he decided to stay away from them. They then decided to walk around, not knowing anything. He decided to follow them, but making sure he stayed a little far of a distance so it wouldn't scare them. 10 minutes later, they actually made it to an actual mall. He went inside with them, still staying his perfect distance away from them. The girls decided to do some window shopping, not going in any shop, but he decided to stay close by. She's not supposed to do something. What is that supposed to mean? Because he did not understand what is it that she's not supposed to do. 20 minutes later, they actually went inside a restaurant to get something to eat. Mark decided to get something to eat with them, but mainly stayed 2 tables away so he wouldn't be seen. He decided to get something to eat anyways, mainly because he hasn't eaten anything the whole day, considering the situation that he was in. He can actually hear his stomach growling when he saw the food, so he decided to get himself something to eat as well. Eating his food quite quickly, he decided to keep an eye on the girls. Problem is, he couldn't hear anything what the girls were saying. All he noticed is that around 5 minutes later, one of the girls looked completely sad, like she didn't want to do something. He eventually assumed that must have been Crystal. Not knowing all about anything, he just made an instant assumption. She decided to get up and walk away, but having a syringe in her hand from one of the girls actually giving her, he had a little bit of a bad feeling about it, so he decided to go and follow her, tossing his food aside. Luckily, he ate a bit of it. When it came down to it, he followed her completely back to her house. Looking into the window of her actual living room, he actually seen her go inside the actual bathroom. He had a really bad feeling at that point, so he decided to kick the door in. Not hearing anyone, he decided to knock on the actual bathroom door. He can hear a scream, but then decided to kick the bathroom door in anyways. Looking at the syringe and looking at her, he then yelled, "What are you doing?" She was kind of frightened, asking him, "Who are you?" She responded. And then he just looked at her and said, "Someone who is going to save you from doing a very, very bad decision." He then grabbed the syringe and slammed on the ground and then crushed it with his bare feet. She then looked down and just wondered what just happened. He said, "Were you actually about to do that?" She just looked at him in a very sad manner and said, "I don't know. I didn't want to, but it was the only way for them to be my friend," she responded in a very sad way. He then looked at her and said, "This isn't the way. Those aren't your friends. If your friends want you to do something that you don't want to do, they're not your friends. They're just bullies at that point." She then looked up at him, then decided to rush and give him a big hug. He gave her a pat on the back and said, "Next time, if you want a friend, try talking to people who loves to be around you, not some idiotic girls who just want to take advantage of you and think that you're easy to be pushed over or easy to manipulate, like a puppet on a string." She then looked down and said, "You're right," crying a little bit, with some tears in her eyes. He decided to walk out, but he said, at the end, he said, "Sorry about the doors. I didn't want to do that, but it was the only way for me to get in." She then looked at it and said, "Oh, don't worry. I can actually repair these," she responded. And he said, "Really? You know how to repair a door?" And that's when she said, "Yeah, it's not that difficult. All I need is a nail and a hammer. My dad can do the rest, but at least it will keep it steady before he actually comes," she replied. He then left and said, "Okay, I wish you best of luck in finding some new people to talk to." She then waved and said, "Goodbye and thank you." As Mark came to his house, he noticed that the door was open. He knew he didn't leave it open. He knew he shut it. So he thought to himself, there must be an intruder in my house. So he decided to walk in quite casually and calmly, knowing that there could be someone still in there. And that's when he saw someone who was on his bed. It was a kid, wearing a white suit with a black belt and tie, and just decided to jump up and says, "Congratulations, you completed all the tasks." Mark replied, "Who in the hell are you? And you're the one who gave me those tasks? Why the hell would you do that?" The boy just replied, "I'm just here to congratulate you on a job well done on completing those tasks. I sent you those for a reason." Mark asked, "For what reason would I be going around creeping on people and helping them? Why would you even do that?" The boy responded, "Well, you know that you did a lot of things that helped a lot of people, right? Well, not a lot, but at least 3 people in this world. Did you know that?" Mark looked and said, "What do you mean? Explain yourself, please." The boy looked at him and said, "Well, do you remember James, the little boy you walked home? Well, if you never came, he would have been walking alone. And what you didn't know, that there was two rival gangs that was going to come out and start having a shootout. He would have been killed in a crossfire." Mark was stunned about what he just said. "And what about Terry, the boy you walked to the store? Well, those 10 minutes, that error that you had when it came to helping him, Terry would have died and his mom would have died from a hit and run. A car would have lost control because, unfortunately, he wouldn't have seen the actual stoplight. Oh, and let's not forget Crystal, the person that you helped from that syringe. The one thing that you didn't know is that that needle was infected. And the thing is, it would have affected her bloodstream and she would have died around, I would say, in 2 days." Mark was stunned and didn't know what to say. He said, yeah, you saved at least 3 people's lives today. So, thing is that you should be happy," the boy said. Mark looked at him and said, "But why me? Why did you actually want to send me to do all these?" The boy replied, "Well, you have nothing else to do now, do you?" Mark just didn't know what to say after that, because he knew he really didn't have much to do except try to make these deadlines for this book. But as the boy, he then thought walking and said, "Well, my job here is done. I was just here to tell you what you've done, and that's all. So my mission here is complete. Farewell." Mark then looked and just said, "Wait, what if I would have failed any one of these tasks? What would you have done?" The boy then stopped, and it's kind of like time froze for Mark. And the boy looked at him from the corner of his eye and said, "I don't think you want to know that answer." Then walked out and shut the door. Mark then ran to the door and opened it to notice the boy was completely gone, like he was never here. Mark then went to his living room and just sat on the couch. What in the hell was that all about? He asked himself. But then he got released and, well, I may have lost a day of writing, but at least that is over.